The new Halloween trilogy is not the first time the Halloween series has tackled the idea of trauma, but this time we see more of a focus on how trauma can affect our connections to other people in complex ways. In the first of the trilogy, titled Halloween, that came out in 2018, we see Laurie's trauma and how it has affected her life and that of her family's, while Halloween Kills focuses on the impact trauma can have on an entire community. The movies are a real mess in many ways, but then so is trauma. So let's talk about the new Halloween movies. Before we get started, please subscribe and click the bell so you won't be caught off guard when we release new videos. I want to also give a content warning. This video does briefly mention suicide, ableism, and of course the movies have quite a bit of violence. There will be spoilers for Halloween and Halloween Kills. Laurie Strode was a survivor of a series of murders that happened in Haddonfield 40 years ago. Traumatized from the events, she has spent the entire 40 years since preparing in case her attacker Michael Myers ever comes back. Instead of fleeing or trying to isolate herself, Laurie instead tries to handle her trauma through control. She makes her house basically into a giant compound meant purely for trapping and killing Myers, even going so far as to putting her young daughter Karen through extreme training. This resulted in CPS taking Karen away at the age of 12. Since then, Karen has distanced herself and has a family of her own. The film does a good job of handling the complexity of respecting Laurie as both a victim and someone who has harmed her daughter. I was glad to see this because without Laurie learning to acknowledge the pain she had done to Karen, it would have undercut the message of the film to believe in victims and focus more on their pain than the motivations of the one doing the harm, like we see when the podcasters come to interview Laurie.
There's nothing to learn. There are no new insights or discoveries.
While Laurie at first justifies anything she put her daughter through, we get this beautiful moment later where Karen literally is placed back inside of her childhood trauma. But this time, her pain is validated and she receives an apology and is told she'll be protected by her mother.
I was wrong to raise you the way I did, but at least I can protect you. Nothing will happen to you.
Without this moment, it would be easy to see Laurie as right, and it's good Karen went through what she did. But there's nothing heroic or right about making someone else suffer, no matter your intentions. Laurie's relationship with Karen speaks to the phrase, hurt people, hurt people. Unfortunately, when you have lived through traumatic events that have long-term effects, it's quite possible to have unhealthy responses that can be difficult to manage. I do want to be clear, just because you have trauma doesn't mean you will hurt people. Just that you will likely have triggers, behaviors, and coping mechanisms that can make it difficult to navigate relationships, and sometimes that can result in harm. Especially when you have a group of people all with different traumas, requiring a lot of finesse to navigate the different needs and boundaries of each person. And this brings us to Halloween Kills. The second film focuses less on Laurie's family and more on the community as a whole. Or I guess the second film of the new trilogy, but the third film in this timeline. So some of these Halloween timelines get a little confusing to a newcomer. The town all remembers the events from 40 years ago, and in response to knowing people are being killed again, they rally together to hunt Myers down. I think this movie tries to show us how important community really is, that we are all connected and we aren't better off by ignoring others' problems. If Michael Myers had some sort of special connection to Laurie, then people may just try to avoid her. We even hear several characters theorize that maybe Myers is just after Laurie, and even Laurie has convinced herself of this.
You and Allison should not have to keep running because of the darkness that I created.
No one wants to be around the person who seems to be surrounded by death and pain. But it wasn't Laurie's fault Michael Myers came there at all. This can be one of the hardest things as someone lives with trauma. People may not understand what you've been through and how it's impacted you, and decide it's not worth taking a chance to connect with you. Maybe they think you have too much drama or something. And if you're the person people are avoiding, like Laurie, it can be difficult to not assume they are right to do so. that being near you is somehow dangerous. And to be clear, no one owes you friendship or their time, and no one else is your responsibility. We all have to decide who we like and want to spend time with, as well as what we are capable of handling. I'm only trying to point out that the trauma can be somewhat of a prison, much like Lori's house was, and that perhaps we should proactively consider how many people in our communities are hurting, and is there anything we are able to do about that? I think this is the intent of the scenes where we meet random couples in the town only for them to be murdered. In many cases, there is no rhyme or reason to who harm comes to in a community, so it's important we are willing to be proactive and get organized, so help is available for whoever needs it. We don't want anyone to be forgotten or left behind. Unfortunately, our society is not designed that way, and I think this is what leads to the death of the escaped patient in the movie. As the town rallies together and is determined to put an end to Michael Myers, they go after the wrong man. While this could be considered just a criticism of mob mentality, I want to point out, after this, we see the same group of people take down Michael. Not only do they take him down, but Myers seems weaker than normal during the fight, suggesting that trauma is less able to do us harm when people are united with a goal of protecting one another. At the hospital, the crowd seems more out for vengeance. But more importantly, I think we need to ask, why doesn't anyone know what Michael's face looks like? Why does no one know who the patient is? Because they were removed from society and institutionalized, which we have a long history as a society of doing. Their faces are even shown earlier on the news, but no one cares to notice because people who have been institutionalized might as well be invisible to society. They are probably some of the most traumatized people, and they have just been discarded. No one wanted them in their community, and then out of fear, this town pushes this patient to die by suicide. People who have mental illnesses are far more likely to be the victim of violence than commit violence themselves. Yet every time there is another gun shooting or acts of violence, we see mental health issues brought up. Mental illness becomes the scapegoat when we, as a society, cannot understand the motivation of someone who has done harm. And even in our language, mental illness is often used to dehumanize people or paint someone as bad. I also wonder if this is perhaps a critique of the franchise itself. Michael Myers throughout the films is referred to as crazy. And when you really think about it, for many using that word, it's just another way to explain the motivations of Michael, which the films have already shown we should instead be focused on helping those in harm's way. And the director David Gordon Green has also said he doesn't see Michael as supernatural, and has talked about Myers having stunted growth of a 6-year-old who was taken from his home and institutionalized, which makes me wonder if we will see Michael portrayed as a product of our society when Halloween ends. After all, it is kind of weird that his Dr. Loomis just knows the boy is pure evil when he supposedly never spoke a word in 15 years. Overall, I felt the new Halloween trilogy does some interesting things, conveying how trauma ripples out and affects those we love and even our communities, that we are all connected and need to protect one another. The way this is portrayed among Laurie's family was particularly powerful, how the trauma has continued to affect generations, and they ultimately come together to tackle that. And I really liked what I feel Halloween Kills is trying to say about our communities, especially how it seems to offer a critique of how traumatized people can be ostracized, and how others can just be forgotten. That being said, the films definitely have plenty of flaws. For example, I'm not a big fan of this weird howling scene with all the patients in the first one, even if later there was a scene stating how harmless all the patients were besides Michael Myers.
We were checking their emails at a local library. Just found 3 of them holding hands chasing butterflies at a flea market off the 220.
Like I said earlier, the movies are really messy. But what do you think? Did you like how trauma was portrayed between Laurie and her family? Do you think the films had anything interesting to say about mental health in our communities? Let me know in the comments.
There's a system.
Well, the system failed.
Thanks for watching, everyone, and a special thanks to our patrons for supporting us. If you liked this video, please consider slashing that like button. We want to recommend Rutko. I really loved his video on comparing Berserk and The Masters, talking about toxic friendships. I'm also a sucker for pixel graphics, as you may have noticed, especially if you're a longtime fan of the channel, so it's not surprising I love his visuals. Please take care of yourselves, and remember, you're not alone.